The massive alien ship hung in space above Earth like a dark cloud blocking the sun. Its crystal walls glowed with strange purple light, and it was bigger than any city humans had ever built. Ambassador Kyung-ho looked through the small window of his shuttle as it flew toward the giant vessel. His hands were steady, but his heart beat fast inside his chest. Behind him sat two other humans from the Terran Defense Council. They looked nervous. Kyung-ho did not blame them. Today might be the last day their planet existed as a free world. The Galactic Empire had come to Earth with 1,000 ships, each one carrying enough weapons to destroy a moon. "Sir," said his aide, a young woman named Jiwoo who worked in communications back on Earth. "Are you sure about this message? Once you say it, there's no taking it back." Kyung-ho nodded slowly. His gray hair was neat and his blue suit was clean, but his eyes looked tired.
He had been a diplomat for 30 years.
He had seen many wars start with words just like the ones he was about to speak. "The message is clear," he said in his quiet voice. "We tell them to leave. We give them one last chance to walk away. But sir, they have 1,000 ships. We have maybe 50 that can actually fight in space. Our weapons are old chemical rockets and basic nuclear bombs. Their technology is hundreds of years ahead of ours." Kyung-ho looked at her with kind eyes. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is stand up to a bully, even when you know you might lose. The shuttle docked with the alien flagship called the Dominion's Edge. Kyung-ho and his team walked through halls made of some kind of living crystal that pulsed with light. Alien creatures moved through the corridors. Some looked like giant insects with too many arms. Others had scales and walked on 4 legs. All of them stared at the humans like they were looking at animals in a zoo. They reached a huge room where the Empire's war commander waited. His name was Vextar, and he looked like a cross between a lizard and a spider. He had 4 yellow eyes and skin that changed colors when he moved. Behind him stood dozens of other alien officers from different worlds the Empire had conquered. "So," Vextar said in perfect English, his voice making a sound like grinding metal, "the little humans have come to talk. How amusing." The other aliens made sounds that Kyung-ho guessed was laughter. It sounded like breaking glass mixed with animal growls. "War Commander Vextar," Kyung-ho said, standing straight and looking directly into those 4 yellow eyes. "I come with a message from the people of Earth and all human colonies. Speak quickly, little creature. My patience grows thin and your world grows closer to its final hour." Kyung-ho took a deep breath. Around the room, alien warriors with weapons and armor that could cut through steel like paper watched him. Some had guns that could vaporize a human in seconds. Others carried blades made of energy that glowed like tiny suns. "Withdraw your forces from our system," Kyung-ho said clearly. "Leave our worlds alone. This is humanity's last warning. If you go now, we will not hunt you across the galaxy. If you stay and try to conquer us, you will regret it for whatever time you have left to live." The room fell completely silent. For 5 full seconds, nobody made a sound. Then Vextar began to laugh. It was a horrible sound, like metal scraping against stone. Soon all the other aliens joined in. The laughter grew louder and louder until it filled the entire room. "Warning?" Vextar finally managed to say between fits of laughter. "Warning? You primitive little apes think you can warn the Galactic Empire? We have conquered 1,000 worlds," shouted another alien officer, this one looking like a giant bird with razor-sharp feathers. "We have destroyed species that had technology you cannot even dream of. And you dare to threaten us? Your entire military could not defeat one of our scout ships," added a third alien that looked like it was made of living rock. "We have seen your pathetic rockets and your crude nuclear weapons. A child from any civilized world could build better toys." Vextar raised one of his many arms and the laughter stopped instantly. "Human ambassador, I will give you one chance to show proper respect to the Empire. Get on your knees and beg for mercy. Perhaps we will let some of your species live as slaves." Kyung-ho stood perfectly still. His back was straight, his hands were at his sides, and his voice stayed calm. "I have delivered our message. You have 3 days to consider it. After that, the choice will be taken from your hands." 3 days? Vextar's skin turned a bright red color. "You think we need 3 days to crush your pitiful world? We could glass your entire planet in 3 hours. "We know exactly what you can do," Kyung-ho said. "The question is whether you know what we can do." This made the aliens laugh even harder. Some of them were rolling on the floor. Others were hitting the walls with their fists or claws or tentacles. "What you can do," gasped the bird-like alien. "You can barely leave your own atmosphere. Half your species still lives in mud huts and fights with sticks. Your most advanced ships move slower than our cargo vessels, added another. Your computers are so primitive they could not run a children's game from the civilized worlds. Kyung-ho listened to all of this without changing his expression. When they finally stopped laughing, he spoke again. War Commander, you have heard our warning. In 3 days, if your ships are still in our system, you will understand why it was not empty words. Understand what exactly? Vextar leaned forward, his 4 eyes gleaming with cruel amusement. What could your backward species possibly do to threaten the might of the Empire? That, Kyung-ho said quietly, is something you will have to discover for yourself. He turned and walked toward the door. His 2 companions followed, both looking terrified but trying to stay brave. Wait, Vextar called out. I have not dismissed you yet, human. Kyung-ho stopped but did not turn around. 3 days, War Commander. Remember that number. You have 6 hours. Vextar screamed. 6 hours to surrender your planet, or we will demonstrate why 1,000 civilizations kneel before the Empire's power. 3 days, Kyung-ho repeated and walked out of the room. Back on the shuttle flying toward Earth, Jiwoo looked at her ambassador with worry. Sir, they're going to attack us in 6 hours. Should we start evacuation procedures? Kyung-ho was looking out the window at Earth, that beautiful blue and green ball hanging in the black of space. Send the message to Seoul Defense Command. Tell them diplomacy has failed. Use Protocol 7. Protocol 7? Jiwoo's fingers froze over her communication device. Sir, that's the signal for... I know what it's for, Kyung-ho said softly. Send it now. Jiwoo typed in the code with shaking hands. The message went out instantly to communication stations all over Earth and beyond. It was a simple message with just 2 words. Warning delivered. On the alien flagship, Vextar was already planning the attack on Earth. His officers were excited about adding another conquered world to their collection. They had done this same thing hundreds of times before. The pattern was always the same. They would arrive with overwhelming force, the primitives would beg for mercy, and then the Empire would take whatever they wanted. But as Kyung-ho's shuttle flew back to Earth, something was happening that the Empire did not know about. In hidden bases throughout the solar system, in secret facilities on Mars and the Moon, in asteroid mining stations that were not really mining asteroids, quiet alarms were sounding. The humans had been warned that this day might come. They had been preparing for it for a very long time. And now that preparation was about to begin showing its true purpose. The warning had been delivered. The Empire had laughed. Soon they would learn why that laughter might be the last sound some of them ever made. Captain Soo-jin stood on the bridge of the colony ship New Busan and watched her worst nightmare come true. Through the main viewing screen, she could see the human mining station on Kepler 442b. It had been there for 15 years, home to 3,000 miners and their families. Now it was gone. The Imperial fleet had fired one shot, just one, a beam of pure energy that turned the entire station into glowing gas in less than 3 seconds. Soo-jin's hands gripped the arms of her captain's chair so hard her knuckles went white. Message coming in from the Imperial flagship, said her communications officer, a young man named Ho-jin whose voice shook as he spoke. Put it through, Soo-jin said, though she already knew what it would say. The face of War Commander Vextar appeared on the screen, his 4 yellow eyes gleaming with satisfaction. Attention all human vessels and colonies. You have just witnessed a demonstration of Imperial power. The mining station Kepler 442b contained 3,000 of your species. They no longer exist. Soo-jin felt sick to her stomach, but she kept her face calm. Behind her, several crew members were crying quietly. They all had friends or family members on that station. This was just a small taste of what awaits any who oppose the Empire, Vextar continued. Earth has 4 hours remaining to surrender. Any human ship that attempts to flee or fight will meet the same fate as the mining station. The message ended. Soo-jin stared at the empty space where the station had been. 3,000 people, gone in 3 seconds, Captain, Ho-jin said quietly. What are our orders? Soo-jin looked around at her crew of 47 people. They were miners, farmers, and engineers heading to establish a new colony on Tau Ceti. They had no weapons except some basic tools. Their ship could not outrun an Imperial scout vessel, let alone the massive war fleet surrounding them. We follow our mission, she said finally. We continue to Tau Ceti as planned. But Captain, if the Empire... We do what humans have always done, Soo-jin interrupted. We survive, we endure. And we remember. Back on the Imperial flagship Dominion's edge, War Commander Vextar was reviewing intelligence reports with his chief tactical advisor, an insect-like creature named Zenthara, whose head was covered in dozens of small eyes that could analyze data faster than most computers. "What do our scouts tell us about human military capabilities?" Vextar asked, settling his large body into his command chair. Zenthara's small eyes flickered as she accessed the information. "Primitive in the extreme, War Commander. Their most advanced warships use chemical propulsion and basic nuclear weapons. Their largest vessel is barely 300 meters long. Most of their fleet consists of converted civilian ships with crude armor welded to the hull. How many ships can they field for actual combat? Intelligence estimates no more than 50 vessels capable of space warfare. Perhaps a dozen that could be considered actual warships by civilized standards. The rest are patrol boats and system defense fighters that would be destroyed instantly by our screening vessels." Vextar made the sound that was his species' version of laughter. 50 ships against our 1,000. And their 50 are ancient relics compared to our technology. This will not even qualify as a real battle. "There is more, War Commander," Zenthara continued. "Our intelligence networks have been monitoring their communications for months. The humans appear to be in complete disarray. Their military leaders are arguing among themselves about strategy. Some want to fight, others want to surrender immediately. Their government appears to be collapsing under the pressure." "Excellent. Fear makes the conquest easier. What about their industrial capacity? Laughably primitive. They still use fossil fuels for much of their power generation. Their manufacturing is spread across multiple worlds but lacks any real coordination. They could not build replacement warships fast enough to matter even if they had decades to prepare." Vextar's skin changed to a pleased purple color. "Deploy the fleet in standard intimidation formation. I want every human in their pathetic solar system to see our ships blotting out their stars. Send fighters to do flyovers of their major population centers. Let them see what real power looks like." On the moon, a man named Tae Young was working in his wheat fields when his communication device beeped with an encrypted message. To anyone watching, he looked like exactly what he appeared to be: a farmer in his 50s with calloused hands and dirt under his fingernails. His wheat crop was one of the best on the lunar colonies, and he had been growing it for 12 years. Tae Young read the message twice, then deleted it. He put down his farming tools and walked to his equipment shed. Inside, behind stacks of fertilizer and farming machinery, was a hidden panel in the floor. He entered a code, and the panel slid open to reveal an elevator shaft. The elevator took him down 300 meters into the moon's interior. When the doors opened, Tae Young stepped into a command center that would have impressed military officers on the most advanced worlds. Banks of computers lined the walls, and in the center of the room was a massive holographic display showing the positions of every Imperial ship in the solar system. "About time you got here," said a woman's voice. Tae Young turned to see Young Mi, who was supposed to be a terraforming engineer on Mars. She was wearing a military uniform he had not seen for 15 years. "I came as soon as I got the message," Tae Young said, also changing into a uniform he had kept hidden in a sealed container. "How many others have responded?" "All of them. Every single sleeper agent in the solar system has checked in. The network is fully operational." Tae Young nodded and took his position at a control station that he had built himself but had never been allowed to use until now. Around him, dozens of other farmers and miners and civilians were taking their positions at similar stations. "Status report on the lunar defense grid?" Tae Young asked. "Fully charged and ready," Young Mi replied. "The Empire's sensors show nothing but mining equipment and civilian installations. They have no idea that this entire moon is basically one giant weapon. And Mars? The same. Our terraforming equipment has been doing a lot more than just changing the atmosphere. Every dome city on Mars is sitting on top of enough firepower to level a continent." On Mars, Young Mi had spent 15 years pretending to be an engineer working to make the red planet more suitable for human life. She had published research papers about atmospheric processors and soil chemistry. She had given interviews about the challenges of long-term colonization. She had even won awards for her contributions to terraforming science. What she had actually been doing was building the most sophisticated planetary defense system ever created by humans. The massive atmospheric processors that were supposedly converting Mars' carbon dioxide into breathable air were actually charging systems for planet-wide energy weapons. The soil chemistry equipment was really advanced sensor arrays that could track ships across multiple star systems. The dome cities that housed 2 million Mars colonists were built on top of weapon emplacements that could fire projectiles at significant fractions of light speed. The Empire's intelligence reports listed Young Mai as civilian terraforming engineer. No military significance. Their sensors showed Mars as primitive colony world with basic life support systems and no defensive capabilities. They were about to learn how wrong their intelligence reports could be. Back in space, the Imperial fleet was moving into attack formation. Vextar stood on his bridge watching Earth grow larger on the main screen. Such a pretty little world with its blue oceans and white clouds. Soon it would belong to the Empire like all the other pretty worlds they had conquered. Time to target? He asked his navigation officer. 3 hours and 47 minutes, War Commander. Perfect. Send one more message to the human government. Give them 30 minutes to surrender unconditionally. If they refuse, we begin the planetary bombardment. War Commander, Synthara said, reviewing more intelligence reports. Our scouts have detected some unusual energy readings from various locations throughout the solar system. What kind of energy readings? Unknown. The patterns do not match any technology in our databases. However, the power levels are very low. Most likely primitive power generation systems or industrial equipment. Vextar waved a dismissive arm. Irrelevant. Even if the humans had weapons we did not know about, they lacked the numbers to threaten us. 1,000 Imperial warships against 50 primitive human vessels. The mathematics are simple. What Vextar did not know was that the energy readings his scouts had detected were not from 50 human vessels. They were from weapons systems that had been carefully hidden and disguised throughout the solar system for over 20 years. Mining stations that were actually missile platforms, communication satellites that were really cloaked fighters, asteroid mining ships that carried enough firepower to destroy capital ships, and scattered among the Imperial fleet. Moving slowly and carefully to avoid detection were hundreds of objects that appeared to be nothing more than space debris, pieces of old satellites, chunks of rock, fragments of destroyed ships from decades past. The Empire's sensors dismissed them completely. After all, what threat could floating garbage pose to the most powerful military force in the galaxy? In 4 hours, they would find out. Commander Hyunwoo had been floating in the darkness near Jupiter's Great Red Spot for 20 years, and he was very good at being invisible. His battle station, which he had named Invisible Thunder, looked exactly like a piece of space junk that had drifted away from one of Jupiter's mining operations decades ago. It was covered in fake rust and deliberately damaged hull plating. Its energy signature matched that of dead electronics. Even its gravity generator was turned off, leaving the crew to work in zero gravity, so their station would not show up on gravitational sensors. For 20 years, Hyunwoo and his crew of 200 had lived in complete silence. They could not send messages. They could not receive entertainment broadcasts. They could not even talk loudly, because sound carried through the hull in ways that sensitive instruments might detect. They had volunteered for this duty knowing they might never see their families again. Now, watching the Imperial fleet through sensors so advanced they could count the scales on an alien commander's face from 1,000,000 kilometers away, Hyunwoo finally understood why the sacrifice had been worth it. Thermal readings from the Imperial flagship? He asked his sensor operator, a woman named Hee-Jin, who had been pretending to be dead for 2 decades. Running hot, Commander. They're charging their main guns. Looks like they're preparing for planetary bombardment protocols. How many ships in their attack formation? 843 capital ships plus escorts. They're leaving about 150 ships in reserve formation around their command vessel. Hyunwoo nodded. The numbers matched what his intelligence reports had predicted. The Empire always used the same attack patterns because they had never needed to change them. Why develop new tactics when the old ones worked perfectly every time? Time until they reach firing position on Earth? 2 hours and 16 minutes, Commander. Hyunwoo looked at his communications officer, a young man named Woo Jin, whose job for 20 years had been to listen to the most boring civilian radio chatter in human space. Any word from the other stations? Negative, sir. Complete radio silence as ordered. But all the scheduled equipment tests came through on time yesterday, which means everyone is operational and waiting for the signal. On the other side of the solar system, Captain Insu was having what appeared to be a normal conversation with an Imperial customs officer. His cargo ship, the Lucky Dragon, was registered as an independent merchant vessel carrying agricultural supplies to the human colonies. For 12 years he had been flying this same route, carrying soybeans and wheat and rice to hungry colonists on distant worlds. What the customs officer did not know was that Insu's agricultural supplies were actually the most sophisticated intelligence-gathering equipment humanity had ever built. Every grain of rice in his cargo holds was really a microscopic sensor. Every soybean was a tiny transmitter. For 12 years, Insu had been dropping his cargo at Imperial worlds throughout the galaxy, creating a spy network that covered dozens of star systems. Routine inspection. "Captain Insu," said the Imperial officer, a lizard-like creature whose scales kept changing from green to brown as he talked. "We are checking all civilian vessels for weapons before we begin military operations." "Of course, Officer Krelthan," Insu replied in the humble voice he had perfected over years of practice. "I understand completely. The safety of the Empire is very important." The alien officer and his team spent 2 hours going through Insu's ship. They found exactly what they expected to find: a middle-aged human merchant with calloused hands and cheap clothes, carrying a load of food supplies that barely covered the cost of fuel for his old, slow cargo ship. What they did not find were the hidden compartments containing detailed maps of every Imperial military installation within 50 light-years. They did not find the advanced computers that had been analyzing Imperial fleet movements for over a decade. They did not find the weapons that could turn the Lucky Dragon from a harmless merchant ship into something that could cripple an Imperial cruiser with a single shot. "Everything appears to be in order," Officer Krelton said finally. "You may proceed to your destination." "Thank you, officer. The Empire is always fair to honest merchants." As the Imperial inspection team left his ship, Insu continued his act perfectly. He complained about the delay. He worried about his schedule. He asked if there was any way to get a fuel discount since the inspection had cost him time and money. The aliens left thinking he was exactly what he appeared to be: a harmless human trying to make a living hauling food around the galaxy. 5 minutes after they were gone, Insu activated a hidden transmitter and sent a coded message that reached intelligence stations across human space in less than an hour. The message was simple: Imperial fleet movements confirmed. All tactical predictions accurate. Recommend proceed to final phase. In a bunker buried 3 kilometers beneath the Swiss Alps on Earth, a woman named Yunji read Insu's message and smiled for the first time in months. As the head of Terran Strategic Intelligence, she had been planning for this day since the humans first learned that the Galactic Empire existed. For 30 years, human agents had been scattered throughout Imperial space. They worked as merchants, farmers, miners, engineers, translators, and dozens of other civilian jobs. They married aliens from conquered worlds. They raised children who grew up speaking Imperial languages. They became trusted members of alien communities across the galaxy, and every single one of them had been sending information back to Yunji's intelligence network. "Status. Report," she said to her operations team, a group of 50 men and women who had spent their entire careers preparing for this moment. "All deep cover agents have reported in," said her deputy, a man named Kyung-soo, who had been coordinating spy operations for 15 years. "We have confirmed intelligence on Imperial fleet strength, tactical doctrine, command structure, supply lines, and technological capabilities. What about their reinforcement capabilities?" "Limited. The Empire has become overconfident from centuries of easy victories. Most of their military is spread thin across conquered territories to maintain order. If we can defeat the fleet they sent here, it will be months before they can organize a second attack." Yunji nodded. This was exactly what they had hoped for. The Empire's arrogance was their weakness. They had sent what they thought was overwhelming force, but they had not sent everything they had. They expected this to be a quick, easy conquest like all the others. "Recommendations. Proceed with Operation Last Warning," Kyung-soo said. "All assets are in position. All intelligence is confirmed. We will never have a better opportunity than this." Yunji looked at the massive display screen that showed the positions of every Imperial ship, every human defense installation, and every hidden asset throughout the solar system. Red dots for Imperial forces, blue dots for known human military units, and scattered throughout the display, thousands of green dots that the Empire had no idea existed. "Send the activation signal," she said. "Far above Earth, Floating among what appeared to be the wreckage of an old communications satellite, Chanwu felt his fighter respond to life for the first time in 18 months. To Imperial sensors, his ship looked like a piece of broken junk that posed no threat to anyone. The hull was scarred and burned. The engines appeared to be dead. Half the ship looked like it had been blown away by weapons fire years ago. In reality, Chanwu's fighter was the most advanced piece of military technology humanity had ever built. Its stealth systems were so good it could hide inside an enemy ship's sensor blind spot and never be detected. Its weapons were small but precise enough to hit a target the size of a coin from 1,000 kilometers away. And its pilot was Chanwu, who had supposedly failed astronaut training 15 years ago because he was too aggressive and did not follow orders. Well, the truth was that Chanwu had been selected for the most dangerous mission in human military history. For 15 years, he had been training to fly a ship that officially did not exist, preparing to fight a war that most humans hoped would never come. Now, as his engines came online with a whisper-quiet hum that no sensor could detect, Chanwu smiled inside his helmet. "Ghost leader to all ghost units," he said into his secure communication system. "System activation confirmed. All birds are flying. Time to hunting formation is 6 minutes." Across human space, dozens of other pilots responded. Like Chanwu, they had all been failures or washouts from various military programs. In reality, they were the best pilots humanity had ever produced, flying ships that pushed the limits of what physics would allow. Ghost 2, ready? Ghost 7, systems green. Ghost 12, locked and loaded. Chanwu looked at his sensor display, which showed the massive Imperial fleet approaching Earth like a dark cloud of death. In 2 hours, those ships would be in position to destroy his homeworld and everyone he had ever loved. But they had made one critical mistake. They thought they were hunting helpless prey. Instead, they had flown directly into the middle of a trap that had been 20 years in the making. "All ghost units. This is Ghost Leader," Chanwu said, his voice calm and professional. "Remember your training. Remember why we're here. And remember that those aliens think we're primitives who fight with sticks and stones." He activated his targeting systems, and the Imperial fleet was exactly where it was supposed to be when the trap was sprung. War Commander Vextar stood on his bridge, watching Earth grow larger on his main screen. In 30 minutes, his ships would be in perfect position to begin the planetary bombardment that would end human resistance forever. "Final weapons check," he ordered his gunnery officer. "I want every ship ready to fire on my command." "All vessels report weapons charged and ready, War Commander," came the reply. "We await your orders to begin the cleansing of the primitive world." That was when Captain Sangmin's dreadnought Earth's Fury materialized out of empty space, directly in the middle of the Imperial formation. For 20 years, Sangmin's massive ship had been drifting in the outer solar system, its hull configured to look like a large asteroid. Its engines were cold. Its weapons were powered down. Its crew lived in hibernation pods to reduce their heat signatures. To every sensor the Empire possessed, it was just another piece of space rock floating in the darkness. Now, as Earth's fury revealed its true nature, Sangmin felt a grim satisfaction as he watched the Imperial ship scramble to respond to a threat that had appeared in their midst without warning. "All weapons, target the flagship," Sangmin ordered. His crew had trained for this moment in virtual reality simulations thousands of times. They knew exactly what to do. "Firing," reported his weapons officer, a woman named Sun-Hee who had been waiting 20 years to pull this trigger. The Imperial flagship Dominion's Edge was designed to withstand anything the Empire's enemies could throw at it. Its shields could stop nuclear weapons. Its armor could absorb energy beams that could cut through mountains. Its defensive systems had been tested against every known weapon in the galaxy. None of those weapons had been built by humans, who had spent decades studying Imperial technology and finding its weaknesses. Earth's Fury fired a single shot. The beam of energy that emerged from its main gun was not larger or more powerful than Imperial weapons. It was simply designed to hit at exactly the right frequency to overload Imperial shield generators. The beam passed through the flagship's defenses like they were made of paper and tore a hole through the command section big enough to fly a shuttle through. On the bridge of the Dominion's Edge, War Commander Vextar felt his ship shake as systems exploded around him. Half his command crew was dead instantly. The rest were trying to figure out what had just happened. "Status report," Vextar shouted. his four eyes wild with confusion and growing fear. "Unknown vessel has appeared directly in our formation," his tactical officer gasped, her insect-like body smoking from damaged equipment. "It's firing weapons that match no known technology profile. Impossible. Our sensors would have detected any ship large enough to damage us." "War Commander, more contacts appearing throughout the fleet." "They're everywhere." And they were, all around the Imperial formation. Objects that had been dismissed as asteroids, space debris, and derelict ships were suddenly revealing themselves as human warships. Mining stations that had been in place for decades opened up to release clouds of fighters. Communication satellites transformed into missile platforms. Cargo containers floating in space opened like flowers to reveal weapons that immediately began targeting Imperial ships. Captain Hyojin had been pretending to haul scrap metal in her ship, Stellar Scavenger, for 8 years. The Imperial customs officers who had inspected her vessel dozens of times saw exactly what they expected to see. An old, slow cargo hauler operated by a tough-looking woman who barely made enough money to keep her ship fueled. What they had never noticed was that her scrap metal was actually components for a weapons system that could be assembled in less than 5 minutes. When Hyojin received the activation signal, her cargo bay opened up and began launching fighter drones that moved with speed and precision that made Imperial pilots look like amateurs. "This is Scavenger Leader," she said into her communication system as her drones swarmed around Imperial capital, ships like angry insects, all scrap metal packages deployed. Beginning harvest operations. Her drones were not trying to destroy Imperial ships by themselves. They were too small for that. Instead, they were targeting specific systems: sensor arrays, communication equipment, weapon targeting systems. Each drone carried just enough explosive to disable rather than destroy. But when 50 of them hit the same ship at once, the result was devastating. Imperial Captain Thokvar, commanding the heavy cruiser Stellar Dominance, watched his screens go dark one by one as tiny human drones systematically destroyed everything that allowed his ship to fight effectively. "Engineering, what is our status?" he demanded. "Main weapons offline, sir. Secondary weapons offline. Sensors operating at 12% capacity. Communication array destroyed. We are effectively blind and defenseless. How many attackers?" "Unknown, sir. Our remaining sensors cannot get accurate counts, but we estimate thousands of small craft operating throughout the fleet." What Captain Thokvar did not realize was that his ship and dozens of others like it were being systematically disabled to be captured rather than destroyed. The humans wanted Imperial technology intact. They wanted prisoner crews who could provide information. Most importantly, they wanted the galaxy to know that the Empire's ships had been captured by the primitive species they had come to conquer. On Earth, Admiral Wansik finally allowed himself to be seen for what he really was. For 30 years, he had been listed in Imperial intelligence files as a retired human military officer. No current significance. The truth was that Wansik was the supreme commander of humanity's hidden military forces and the man who had planned the defense of Earth down to the smallest detail. Standing in his command center buried beneath the Rocky Mountains, Wansik watched displays that showed the battle unfolding exactly as he had predicted it would. "Status of the lunar defense grid," he asked his operations officer. "Fully charged and ready to fire, Admiral. The lunar colonies are reporting all weapon systems operational. Mars defense platforms? Standing by for fire mission orders. Young Mi reports that her terraforming equipment is ready to demonstrate its true purpose." Wansik nodded. The Empire had made their first mistake when they assumed that human colonies were helpless civilian targets. They were about to make their second mistake by trying to retreat to what they thought was a safe distance. "Signal all units," Wansik ordered. "Execute Operation Mousetrap." Throughout the solar system, weapons that had been hidden for decades suddenly revealed themselves. On the moon, Taeyong's wheat field slid aside to reveal enormous railguns that could fire projectiles at significant fractions of light speed. On Mars, Young Mi's atmospheric processing stations transformed into energy weapons capable of hitting targets in orbit with pinpoint accuracy. The asteroid belt, which Imperial sensors had dismissed as typical debris field with primitive mining operations, suddenly lit up with weapon signatures as hundreds of hidden missile platforms began launching their payloads toward the Imperial fleet. Imperial Admiral Kethmos, commanding the reserve flotilla that was supposed to support the main attack, watched his sensors with growing horror as the entire human solar system revealed itself to be one enormous weapons platform. "How many ships do they have?" he demanded of his intelligence officer. "Unknown, sir. Our estimates appear to have been incorrect. We are detecting weapons signatures that suggest thousands of human vessels, not the 50 that intelligence reported." "Thousands? That's impossible. Their industrial capacity could not support that many warships." "Sir, I don't think they're all warships. I think they're civilian vessels that have been converted to carry weapons. Mining ships, cargo haulers, colony transports. They all appear to be armed and actively engaging our forces." Admiral Kethmos felt something he had not experienced in 300 years of Imperial service: genuine fear. The humans had not just hidden a few secret weapons. They had turned their entire civilization into a military trap, and the Empire had flown directly into the center of it. "Send a message to High Command," he ordered. "Request immediate reinforcement. Full battle fleet strength. Sir, the nearest reinforcement fleet is 47 days away at maximum speed." "Then send the message anyway," Kethmos shouted. "And prepare all ships for emergency retreat to the edge of the system." But even as he gave the orders, Kethmos was beginning to understand that it might already be too late. The humans had not just surprised them. They had surrounded them, and now they were demonstrating that their primitive technology was anything but primitive. Captain Chan Wu and his ghost squadron were moving through the Imperial fleet like deadly shadows, hitting targets that should have been impossible to reach without being detected. His fighter's stealth systems allowed him to fly directly through Imperial formations without being seen, and his weapons were precise enough to target specific systems on enemy ships without destroying the vessels completely. "Ghost leader to all units," he said as he lined up his next shot. "Remember, we want prisoners and intact technology. Disable, don't destroy unless you have no choice." "Copy, Ghost leader," came the replies from his pilots. "Surgical strikes only. Ghost 7 here. I count 43 Imperial ships with disabled weapons and dozens of Imperial ships." The battle lasted 18 hours, but the outcome was decided in the first 30 minutes. By the time the sun rose over Earth, the Galactic Empire's mighty invasion fleet was either destroyed, captured, or fleeing in complete disarray. Of the 1,000 ships that had arrived to conquer humanity, fewer than 200 would make it back to Imperial space to tell the tale. Admiral Wansik stood on the bridge of his flagship Retribution's Dawn, no longer hiding behind the mask of a retired officer of no significance. The massive dreadnought had been disguised as a derelict space station for 25 years, drifting in the asteroid belt and appearing on no Imperial sensors as anything more threatening than abandoned mining equipment. Now, as Wansik surveyed the wreckage of the Imperial fleet through his bridge windows, he felt no satisfaction in the victory. Only a deep sadness for all the lives that could have been saved if the Empire had simply listened to humanity's warning. "Status of Imperial survivors?" he asked his operations officer, Commander So Young. 43 ships have surrendered and are awaiting boarding parties. 17 ships have been completely destroyed. The rest are either disabled and drifting or have retreated beyond the outer system perimeter. Casualties? Imperial losses are estimated at over 400,000 dead or missing. Human military casualties are remarkably light. Fewer than 300 killed, mostly from ships that fought to the end rather than surrendering. Wansik nodded grimly. The numbers were almost exactly what the strategic planning computers had predicted. When you knew your enemy's capabilities, tactics, and psychology better than they knew themselves, it was possible to fight a war with mathematical precision. "Signal from the Imperial flagship." "Admiral," reported the communications officer. "War Commander Vexitar is requesting terms of surrender." "Put him through." The main screen flickered to life, showing the interior of the Dominion's Edge's bridge. It was a scene of destruction. Smoke filled the air. Alien bodies lay motionless among the wreckage of command stations, and at the center of it all sat War Commander Vexitar. His 4 yellow eyes were dim with pain and defeat. 2 of his arms appeared to be broken, and green blood stained his uniform. "Human Admiral," Vexitar said, his voice barely above a whisper. I request terms of surrender for my remaining forces." Wansik studied the alien commander for a long moment. This was the creature who had laughed at humanity's warning, who had ordered the destruction of the mining station with 3,000 innocent people, who had planned to turn Earth into a radioactive wasteland. "War Commander," Wansik said finally, Before we discuss terms, I think you should hear from someone else. The screen split and Ambassador Kyung-ho appeared on the other half. He was sitting in his office on Earth, looking exactly as calm and professional as he had when he delivered humanity's ultimatum 3 days ago. War Commander Vextar, Kyung-ho said politely, I believe I told you that you had 3 days to consider our warning. Vextar's eyes widened as he recognized the human diplomat. You. How did you know? How could your primitive species have hidden such military capability from our intelligence services? We didn't hide it, Kyung-ho replied. You simply refused to see it. Your intelligence services saw exactly what they expected to see. A weak, primitive species that posed no threat. They never looked deeper because they were certain they already knew everything they needed to know about us. Impossible. Our intelligence networks are the most sophisticated in the galaxy. We have spies and sensors throughout human space. We monitored your communications, analyzed your technology, studied your military doctrine. Yes, Kyung-ho agreed. And every piece of information you gathered was carefully prepared for you by our intelligence services. You spent decades studying our weaknesses and never realized that all of those weaknesses were deliberately put on display to make you overconfident. Captain Mi-young's voice cut across all Imperial communication frequencies, broadcasting on every frequency the Empire used for official communications. As commander of the stealth cruiser Ghost of Earth, she had spent the last 6 hours systematically hunting down and capturing Imperial communication ships to make sure her message would reach every corner of the Empire. Attention all Imperial forces, installations and colonies, she announced. This is Captain Mi-young of the Terran Defense Force. The Imperial invasion fleet sent to conquer Earth has been destroyed or captured. War Commander Vextar and his surviving officers are now prisoners of humanity. She paused to let that information sink in before continuing. Let this message carry to every world under Imperial rule. Humanity offered you peace. We sent our ambassador to warn you. We gave you every opportunity to leave our space with your dignity intact. You chose war instead. You chose to laugh at our warning instead of taking it seriously. Throughout Imperial space, on hundreds of worlds filled with billions of aliens who had grown comfortable with the idea that the Empire was invincible, receivers crackled to life with Mi-young's words. Your war commander called us primitive. Your officers mocked our technology. Your intelligence services dismissed us as harmless. Today you learned the price of that arrogance. Remember this lesson the next time you encounter a species that seems weak and helpless. Remember that the most dangerous enemy is the one you underestimate. On the bridge of his crippled flagship, War Commander Vextar listened to the human broadcast and felt something he had never experienced before. Genuine respect for an enemy species. How long? He asked Wonsik. How long have you been preparing for this? Since the day we first learned the Galactic Empire existed, Wonsik replied. 47 years ago, one of your exploration ships made contact with a human colony on the edge of our space. We studied your technology, your tactics, your psychology. We realized that someday you would come for us, so we began preparing. 47 years of deception. 47 years of survival. Wonsik corrected. We are not a warlike species, War Commander. We prefer peace. But we learned long ago that sometimes peace must be defended with strength. On the colony ship New Busan, Captain Soo-jin watched the broadcast with tears in her eyes. The 3,000 people who had died on the mining station would never be forgotten. Their sacrifice had been the final proof that the Empire could not be reasoned with, only defeated. Her communications officer, Ho Jin, looked up from his console. Captain, we're receiving new orders from Terran Command. What are they? We're to continue to Tau Ceti as planned. Our mission to establish a new colony is still active. But we're also ordered to establish defensive installations and begin recruiting volunteers for the Terran Defense Force. Soo-jin nodded. The war with the Empire was over, but humanity had learned that the galaxy was full of dangers. They would never again allow themselves to be caught unprepared. Across the solar system, the heroes who had lived in hiding for decades were finally able to reveal themselves. Tae-young emerged from his underground command center and walked through his wheat fields one last time before turning the farm over to someone else. His war was over. Young Mi shut down the weapons systems hidden in her terraforming equipment and began the real work of making Mars a garden world. Insu set course for home in the Lucky Dragon, his years of intelligence gathering finally at an end. And in a small apartment on Earth, A young ensign named Jahyun sat with her grandfather, an old man named Seong-ho, who had served in the Terran Defense Force for 50 years. "Grandfather," she asked, "why did we have to pretend to be weak? Why couldn't we just show the Empire our strength from the beginning?" Seong-ho looked out the window at the stars, where the wreckage of the Imperial fleet was still visible as tiny glowing specks. "Because, child," he said softly, "the most dangerous human is the one you underestimate. The Empire thought they knew everything about us. They thought we were primitive and helpless. They never imagined that sometimes the best way to win a war is to let your enemy think they have already won. But so many people died. The mining station—" "Yes," Seong-ho said, his voice heavy with sadness. "War always has a price. Those 3,000 people died so that billions of others could live free. Their sacrifice will be remembered as long as humanity exists." Jahyun was quiet for a moment, thinking about the lesson she had learned. Finally, she asked, "Do you think the Empire will come back?" "Perhaps," Seong-ho replied. "But if they do, they will never again underestimate us. They will never again dismiss our warnings as empty words, and that might be enough to prevent the next war from ever starting." In the depths of space, the few Imperial ships that had managed to escape began their long journey home. They carried with them news that would shake the Empire to its foundations. The humans were not primitives. They were apex predators who had learned to hide their fangs until the moment of the kill. The last warning had echoed in the stars. The Galactic Empire had laughed. Now the galaxy would remember why laughter dies when humans stop pretending to be harmless. And in the vast darkness between the stars, other species who had been watching the battle began to reconsider their own assumptions about the quiet, peaceful humans who lived in the small solar system that had just humbled the greatest military power in known space. The age of underestimating humanity was over.